So I don't have a battery in here, and I just got a jump box here to supply the power. And I'm going to switch on the circuit breaker. That'll basically activate the system, and then I'll turn the key on and see how everything goes. So what you just heard was the fuel pump's priming. Turn the accessories on, the dash lights up. Here, just give you a sample of scrolling through the different menus. It'll turn the lights on, hazard switch lights up, 12-volt lights up. Hazards are working. Kill switch kills the car. Everything fires back up. And then check. Turn signals working there. Go to the other side. That's working. You can see the parking lights are on. And see if I can get my foot on the brake pedal. See the reflection of the brake lights working. So I'm gonna call that a success. All right, guys, so it's been another couple days since we tested the wiring, and I gotta say, I got a bump in motivation. I cannot wait until this thing's up and running and can start setting up this dash and the ECU and stuff. But now that we tested the wiring and there's no issues that I saw, I can go ahead and actually start getting the dash components finally secured in. But now we gotta pull some stuff apart, put all the screws in, make sure everything's tight, make sure all the terminals are tight on the kill switch. Sorry, it's kind of dark, but so I made a bracket here that bolts to an existing stud on the firewall, and when we tighten it down, it pushes this plate against the firewall, and I got another one on the top up here that you can't see. But I've run into a problem. So you can see with the plate pushed up against the firewall on the inside, the plugs become accessible on the engine bay side. But I didn't open up the holes enough so it's not pushing up flush against the firewall like it should. So now I got to pull all that back out and remount the holes so that plate can fit nice and flush. But now that the dash is in, it's going to be way harder than it should be. So I'm going to use a carbide bit to open up the hole in the firewall. It's going to fling shit everywhere, so I want to cover up the motor so we don't get metal shavings anywhere we don't want them. This guy right here. Alright, got it all finished up. Got the holes opened up so the plate can sit flush. Got it secured from the backside, and I sealed it off using some 3M strip caulking. This stuff here, it's just kind of like a butyl type seal, but here's what it is. Here's the part number. Works really well for just a sealer for any two panels that get kind of squished together. I'll see if I can show you the brackets that I made on the inside. I've literally been putting off doing this for months because I knew it was gonna be a pain in my ass. Well, to say a pain in my back. Trying to lay in this area, under the door bar, under the dash to get access, but it's super dark. I don't have a flashlight in the shop, but this you guys can't really see anything actually, so this is probably pretty useless to show you, but all right, let's try this again. I ran the house and grabbed a flashlight, so you can see me all up under the dash, but grab the flashlight. There we go. So now you can see the upper bracket way up there, bolted down with 2 studs, and it just presses the plate up against the firewall. And same thing with the lower bracket. So all I gotta do is really loosen those 3 nuts, pivot that bottom bracket out of the way, and I can easily pull it off of the firewall if I need to. But hopefully I won't ever need to. But see if I can't prop this light up here. So you can see I kind of had to stretch the harness to get it all over there because I cut the wires a little on the short side. Actually, it's more than a little on the short side. I had to cut a bunch of zip ties and pull the wiring away from the dash bar. But I think we'll be fine. I don't think there's any tension that's pulling the wires, so I shouldn't have any issues with the pins trying to pull out of the plug. So you can check that off the list. I was kind of stressing about it because I really didn't want to spend all my time under the dash here, on my back, under the bar, to do this. I mentioned that I modded the factory gauge cluster to sync it back in the dash more. I'm not syncing the dash itself, or not the cluster itself in the dash more. I basically just removed the clear face panel and sealed off the motherboard, because that's all I need is the motherboard in this to retain the CAN bus home. So you can see the motherboard is the size of the entire cluster. So really I just turned the gauge assembly into a box to hold the motherboard, and it allowed me to have about 2 inches more depth other than when it had the clear lens on it. So say changed the mount that I made for the aim dash. It used to see it on the side like this. It used to bolt down in the same spot, but it swooped forward instead of coming straight up. So I just changed the geometry a bit and then welded the 2 pieces together. So, and it bolts down where the ignition switch bolts to the column. So they share the same mount. But yeah, I'm super excited for this dash. So today we got the kill switch wiring all tightened up and that panel secured to the dash finally. Got the steering column bolted to the rack and secured finally. We got the plate secured to the firewall, got that sorted. Pulled the gauges out. They're not going to go back in yet because I need to source the signal wires from this loom for the turn signal lights, fuel level, traction control light, you know, kind of all the warning lights. So take those wires, I need to wire them into the aim dash. That way the appropriate stuff will light up when it needs to. Actually, I'll probably just put all that back in and do that later. I'm really trying to focus on getting everything done that needs to be done to be able to fire up the car for the first time. So getting those indicator lamps wired up isn't a big priority right now. So get everything plugged in and move forward with that stuff at a later date once everything is up and running, and probably after it's tuned really. This gauge panel that you've seen in here, this guy right here, this was out of my last car. It's got the Stack Pro Control gauges with oil pressure, boost, and AFR, but none of that is needed because it's all oriented in the AIM dash display. This guy here, it's going to read everything that the ECU reads, plus all the auxiliary gauges, and it even has provisions to wire in anything else I wanted to. It's super upgradable, so I have zero need for any other auxiliary gauges. So I'll probably just find another dash vent and just block off the whole thing instead of having the gauges, and use that instead. Because the only thing I need is the traction control button and the hazard switch. Everything else can be blanked out. So, and I clearly don't need the vents because there's no heater assembly in the car. So those gauges, actually, if any of you guys are interested in the gauges, feel free to comment and I'll find a way to get a hold of you. Because I'm not going to use them, but they're super nice gauges. Multiple, there's a high warning and a low warning for each one, and they have an auxiliary output, so you can set parameters where the gauges at a certain level can trigger a relay to turn something else on, like oil pressure. If the oil pressure is under a certain point, trigger a buzzer, or if it's over a certain point, you could have it trigger a bright ass red light or something. So they're nice auxiliary gauges, but I have no use for them anymore because it's all integrated into that dash display.